Why the hell do we want to push for diversity over just like pure raw skill? Just put the fucking person that's right for the job in the position. Don't put somebody in a position just because they're a minority. Mid-air collision kills 67 people in the deadliest U.S. air disaster in almost a quarter century by AP News. This is an image of the wreckage right here, but I get a Trump later. Let's get into it. A mid-air collision between an army helicopter and a jetliner killed all 67 people aboard 2 aircraft. Officials said Thursday as they scrutinized the actions of the military pilot in the country's deadliest aviation disaster in almost a quarter century. At least 28 bodies were pulled from the icy waters of the Potomac River after the helicopter apparently flew into the path of the American Airlines regional jet late Wednesday while it was landing at Ronald Reagan National Airport, just across the river from Washington. Officials said the plane carried 60 passengers and 4 crew. 3 soldiers were aboard the helicopter. Go ahead and comment in the comment section what you think about this situation. This is a horrible and tragic situation. It's scary because statistically, flying is the most safest way of transportation. President Donald Trump told a White House news conference that no one survived. We are now at the point where we are switching from a rescue operation to a recovery operation, said John Donnelly, the fire chief in the nation's capital. Air crash investigations can take months, and federal investigators told reporters they would not speculate on what caused the collision. Damn, it's sad because the affected families of this situation, they want to know now what happened. Air crash investigations can take months, and federal investigators told reporters they would not speculate on what caused the collision. No one goes on an airplane thinking it's going to be their last. The main kicker of this story is that it's a government helicopter, not no personal helicopter. It's a government Black Hawk. One of the 2 pilots in the helicopter may have had night vision goggles on. And if you see the video we're going to react to in a second, the helicopter was at full fall and it hit the tail of the main plane. And once you lose the tail of your plane, oh man, you're just going to nosedive. After this, we're going to react to Trump. Washington, D.C. plane crash. Why and how did it happen?
It happened last night. Sean, great to have you with us. Good afternoon to you. So look, how did the passenger jet change its flight path last night?
Yeah, good afternoon, Kamali. I mean, first of all, our sympathy. 64 civilians, 3 military have perished in this, what looks like a very, very tragic accident. It's interesting that you look at the factors. The weather looks absolutely fine. There's no reason weather factors. It's happened in one of the most congested air control areas in the world. So there's massive control. Nobody moves without following a clear procedure. And it's all designed to stop these sort of accidents happening. So the real question is, why it happened and how it happened. What we do know is that the main runway here, it's not quite orientated properly, but that's the main northerly runway. So the American Airlines aircraft, as all of the others, would have been coming to land there and then taking off in this direction. Okay. Meanwhile, the Nighthawk would have been operating its way. Sorry, Black Hawk would have been operating its way down the Potomac here. Now, as the pilot of the Black Hawk, he'd have thought all of the civilian traffic is to the north of me, leaving or arriving. What happened just before this accident, though, was the American Airlines aircraft was on approach down here, was suddenly asked, could he take the shorter runway, which is the runway here?
The runway that the passenger aircraft, they switched over to a different one, but they still had the right of way.
Which is the runway here. He said he could. So therefore, rather than going straight along that line, he diverted down to the south to get himself onto a lineup for that runway there. All of that, of course, would have put him on a direct collision course. Now, that sounds awful, but the whole purpose of procedural is that they may well have been crossing. In fact, the 2 dots on the radar would have absolutely superimposed themselves, but they should have been height deconflicted, because that way you can guarantee they'll never hit each other.
So the helicopter was flying too high. Why was the helicopter flying too high? Helicopters are not bound like airplanes. Helicopters can fly at any altitude. Realistically, while the passenger airplane did change its runway it wanted to land on, theoretically, the height difference at which each was coming in, it should have been good. But the Black Hawk was a little bit higher. Now I need to understand why the hell that Black Hawk was so high, especially when the passenger airplane had clearance to go on runway. Comment below what you think.
Guarantee they'll never hit each other. Now, an airline will eventually go through 200 feet, the height at which the helicopter was, but it'll do it really close to the runway, and the helicopter should be nowhere near that. So the fact remains is that somehow this helicopter, because the The collision happened at 400 feet at about 150, 160 miles an hour. The question is, what was the helicopter doing at that height? And frankly, it doesn't look very survivable, and that's why it doesn't surprise me that they've called off the search now.
And in the video, you literally see the plane going and the Black Hawk hitting the back. Everybody died.
Called off the search now.
Just before we move on, Sean, how unusual is it for a helicopter to go to that kind of height? I mean, is that kind of standard procedure? We heard from Sean Duffy, the Transport Secretary, that everything was standard up until the collision point.
Yeah, and I think what he was saying is that this helicopter wasn't on a special mission. It was a military helicopter. We're very close to the White House. There are all sorts of military flights that could be doing something unusual. Whenever I've been involved in controlled airspace in a military aircraft, the civilian authorities clear a corridor for you and you fly directly through it. This was following a helicopter route. The reason they're not under radar control is here they could probably be seen by the radar. There's a bridge here. You're flying low level, you can't be seen on radar. Therefore, it's very difficult for the controllers to control aircraft here.
And that's one thing about helicopters. When you fly at low altitude, sometimes you do not show on the radar. And that's the scary part. No one would think it would happen, especially when it's not popping up on your radar. You have clearance to go on the runway. So it's literally, it was nothing that the passenger airplane could have done differently. Nothing.
Control aircraft here. That's why procedurally you have to be low. 200 feet is very low, but you've probably seen them down the Thames regularly. And as Mark Stone was saying, regularly over here, lots of helicopters very low.
Interesting. All right, so look, so what could the helicopter pilots have actually seen as they're moving their way down the Potomac?
One of the challenges about military helicopters, you generally have a lot of devices to help you see at night. I used to fly with night vision goggles, quite heavy, and also forward-looking infrared. They work really well in the middle of the countryside where there's no ambient light. As soon as you get to cities like this, and I think we've got a shot of it as well, there's this whole area has got full of lights. Washington.
They did say that.
Also, the airfield is covered in lights. OK, this is the emergency scene. But you imagine now, an airline during the day, you can see the airline shape. At night, it's just a couple of flashing lights. If you try to see that flashing light in a whole load of other flashing lights around an airport, you can see the landscape beyond. It's really difficult to see. You can't trust your eyes at night.
Okay, that makes sense. That's what my coworker was explaining to me earlier.
And that's why by nighttime, particularly in these zones, you have to fly procedurally. You can never veer from that, because if you rely on the fact you might see the aircraft, you won't.
Right. The procedure does have an altitude, though, doesn't it, as well?
The whole process, they will have spent years developing a procedural deconfliction using models, using all sorts of different... So even though the aircraft was rerouted to runway 33, procedurally, that still should have been very safe. And I think the investigation will focus on why they ended up with a helicopter being apparently at 400 feet.
Breaking. New angle of the American Airlines plane versus Black Hawk crash in D.C. Bang. And then nosedive straight into the river. Damn, bro, that plane looked bright as fuck. Cause that's it. That's it right there.
Then my administration will set the highest possible bar for aviation safety. We have to have our smartest people. It doesn't matter what they look like, how they speak, who they are. It matters intellect, talent, the word talent. They have to be talented, naturally talented geniuses.
So Trump basically saying that it was a skill issue. Trump basically saying that the reason this accident happened was because the wrong people was in the wrong position.
The FAA's diversity push includes focus on hiring people with severe intellectual and psychiatric disabilities.
Wow.
That is amazing. And then it says FAA says people with severe disabilities are most underrepresented segment of the workforce, and they want them in, and they want them, they can be air traffic controllers. I don't think so. A week before I entered office, they put a big push to put diversity into the FAA's program.
Retarded. Then I just want the most qualified person for the job. Black, white, Mexican, Asian, I don't give a fuck. If you have the skills, if you have the intellect, if you have the experience, you should have the position because you're just qualified for it. Why the hell do we want to push for diversity over just like pure raw skill? Just put the fucking person that's right for the job in the position. Don't put somebody in a position just because they're a minority. Well, I saw Trump is saying all this without any evidence. He's just saying, he's just yelling DI, DI, DI.
You need a very special talent and a very special genius to be able to do it.
Procedures were right for the plane to change the runway it wanted to land on. The only question was, why the hell was the Black Hawk flying at such a high altitude? It's already nighttime, so when it's nighttime, you have to follow the procedures because you cannot see the planes. When you're already in an area that has a bunch of lights, your night vision goggles are useless. But here we go with Trump saying, "Oh, the air traffic controllers, oh my God, the push for diversity is what caused this." When in reality, Trump should be up there saying we need to have an investigation on why that Black Hawk was at such a high altitude.
The FAA's diversity and inclusion hiring plan, which says diversity is integral to achieving FAA's mission of ensuring safe and efficient travel. I don't think so.
That's not. That's not. You cannot be focusing on diversity, the most possible safest team at the same time. It just doesn't make sense because you're literally putting one over the other. You're literally saying, all right, instead of having the most safest, let's make sure we have the most diverse. And that's literally, that's retarded. I would support him taking away some of that DI shit. And that's what people are literally doing. Like, diversity have nothing to do with safetiness. It has nothing. But yeah, YouTube, that's going to be the ending of this reaction video. Just be thankful, man, because you never know. You just never know what can happen. If you make it home, praise God, because somebody didn't.